Good afternoon. I am really excited to share about this topic. If you are following on live, please say hello, or if you're using the replay. This is meant to be an educational video, a resource for you. I first want to just kind of preface everything by saying, like I said, this is educational. This is about empowerment, learning, education, so that we can help others. I am not here to say like you should or should not take birth control. I just hope that what you get out of this is some empowerment and just some learning, because I personally had zero idea. And when I say zero, I mean actually zero idea about any of these. I think I knew one risk of birth control before I took it, and I took it at such a young age that I didn't have this information. And I'm 31 years old now, and now I'm learning more about it so that I hope other people can also learn too. You can be more empowered, and we can just share this with other women. So whether you are on birth control, whether you're considering stopping, whether you've not taken it for a while, or you're considering going on it, this is literally meant to just be an education purpose. So a little bit about my story with birth control. I started birth control when I was 14 years old. Obviously did not want to tell my parents. So did I get any kind of resources? Did I get any kind of support? Absolutely not. I just went on it. I started taking it, and that was that. It helped my acne. It helped I had really heavy cycles at the time, and I had a boyfriend, and that was just what you did, or what I thought you did, right? So I just didn't have any kind of support or education around that. And that was such an unfortunate thing that, the people that were prescribing these, whether it be the doctor or the pharmacist, didn't give any kind of support or ask if I had, okay, I won't lie. They asked, do you have any questions about this? I don't know what I have questions about. I've never taken it, or I'm 14. I'm told that I should take it, or I can take it. So of course I don't know what to ask, right? I think that's such a disservice that we say, do you have any questions? When you pick up a prescription, but how do I know what I have questions about, right? So anyways, I've been on some form of birth control for 15 years. I was on the birth control pill, then I was on the IUD, then I was on the pill again, and I stopped taking birth control almost 2 years ago now. And since I stopped taking it, or kind of right before I stopped, I was just really interested to learn about what it does to the body and how I can kind of transition off of it, and then also just how I can support my body after, because there's so many things that the birth control pill that is so easy, it's just commonplace, thousands upon millions upon billions of women just take it. It's just part of life, right? But unfortunately we don't really get an opportunity to be informed in it. So this is literally just about being informed. My friend shared this book with me. It is fantastic. If you've never read this book, I think it's also on Audible too, but it is such a good book. So it's called Beyond the Pill. Whether you are on birth control, whether you are coming off, it's been a while, or even if you're not, there's so many things about just hormones in here, and just some hormonal balances, some things that we can do to support ourselves. There's even information about what lab tests you can get ordered if you have certain symptoms. There's nutrition ideas in here. It is such a good book. So even if you're not on the pill. Okay, so first about our cycle. So our typical menstrual cycle lasts 28 days. It can be anywhere from 21 to 36 days, and your average period length is about 4 to 6 days. On day 1 of our cycle, and okay, I'll backtrack too. I didn't know any of this because I was on birth control, so I just knew when my period was going to be. Then I was on an IUD for 7 years. I didn't have a period for 7 years. And then I was on birth control again, and then I came off. So I haven't had a true, I would say the last 2 years are the most learning I've done about my body and my hormones, because I didn't really have cycles, right? If you didn't know, the birth control pill, what it does is it actually shuts off communication between your brain and your ovaries. So that causes a lot of issues for our whole body. But the bleed that you have when you're on the birth control pill is not true. It's not a true menstrual cycle, because you never ovulated. So it's just a withdrawal bleed. So I've never had a real, cycle until the last couple of years. So it's been a learning experience, and I'm by no means an expert. Like I said, this is new news to me, and I'm just learning, and I hope that other people can, be empowered by it. So if you didn't know, day 1 is your first day of your cycle. It's the first day you bleed. In the first 14 days of your cycle, estrogen is higher. That gives you more like plump skin, you're perky, your curves. And then day 15 to 28, progesterone is prominent. That is like your calm hormone, your feel good, more relaxation. So the first half, estrogen, second half, progesterone. The thing about the pill is it makes it has the exact same hormones that are being given to you every single day of the month. So you don't get that natural flow that you're supposed to get, right? Which can cause a lot of issues for our body. Hormones are not just for cycle, they're not for reproduction, not just for sex, not just for babies. It affects so much more than that. So when one thing's out of balance, another thing can be out of balance, okay? So some good things. And here, like I said, I'm not here to bash. I mean, there's a lot of negatives that I'll bring up about birth control, but it's not my place to say what you should or shouldn't do. And I've been on it for so many years that, like I said, this is just about learning. So some good things about birth control is that it was such an advancement for women. So when it came out in the 1960s, it was huge. Women were, going to university. They were getting different careers that they never really had an opportunity before. They could work outside of the home. It just led to a lot of advancements for women, which is great. But there's actually been no change in it since it was first introduced. So no updates since the 1960s. I found this very interesting. So there was in 2016, there was a trial of injectable male contraceptives, but it was suspended after determining the risks outweighed the benefits. There was 320 men in the study. 20 out of 320 said that they couldn't tolerate the side effects. The side effects were pain at the injection site, acne, and depression. It was 96% effective, but 20 men said they were uncomfortable and they scrapped it. The early trials of birth controls in women back in the 1960s, 15% had side effects and 3 women died, and they didn't investigate. So, how is that fair, right? It's unbelievable that we've not had any kind of advancements or, changes to birth control in that long. So, some issues that we have with birth control. It gives you, like I said, the same amount of hormones the entire month. It doesn't fluctuate like a normal cycle would. And really one of the biggest issues from reading this book that I found, and even for myself, was most women are placed, not most, but a lot of women are placed on birth control for not necessarily birth control uses, right? More than 50% are placed on the pill for other reasons than preventing pregnancy. So we're taught to see the pill as a solution versus finding the root cause. So we might be prescribed it for menstrual cramps, irregular periods, acne or skin conditions, endometriosis, headache, migraine relief, abdominal hair growth or loss, PMS, mood swings, painful periods, endometriosis, PCOS, acne. So the pill doesn't fix those hormonal issues or imbalances. They just mask whatever symptom you're having. So if you ever go off of it, you'll likely have those symptoms again, or you're going to have those symptoms underlying because that root cause is not, dealt with. Plus, you're going to have side effects from the birth control pill. So it's unfortunate that we don't, traditional medicine doesn't, go at root causes. We need to be looking at functional medicine, naturopaths, things like that try to get to root causes of what's going on so that we can actually fix things instead of masking it. Tell me if you've heard this one. The pill tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant. So this is one that actually which I need a new one, but my gynecologist told me because I was coming off of the IUD and I was going to go back on birth control a few years ago. And she said, okay, well, you haven't had your period for 7 years. I said, so do I take it like normal? She said, you can just keep taking it all the time. You don't need to stop, and you don't need yourself to have a cycle or to have a bleed. She said, your body will just think it's pregnant. That's just what the pill does. She said, if you bleed, stop, and then keep going. And of course I didn't. I had no period for 7 years. So when I went back on the pill, I again didn't have one. But it's not true because it's not the same as our regular hormones and our regular cycle that ebbs and flows. It's called a cycle for a reason. It's not a line, it's a cycle, like a circle or a wave, right? There's ups and downs. It's not a literal flat line. And that's what birth control does, right? Okay, so you never ovulate when you have a period, or when you're on birth control. You don't actually have a period. It's just a withdrawal bleed. The pill's job is to stop your brain from communicating with your ovaries, and that can affect all of your hormones. So, some potential risks for birth control are hormonal confusion, which means missing or irregular periods, heavy or light periods. You might have shorter cycles, infertility or headaches, digestive problems like leaky gut, inflammatory bowel disease, energy reduction. You could have fatigue, adrenal and thyroid dysfunction, skin issues like hair loss. I had that. Drying skin, mood disruption like depression or anxiety. You can also have lady part disturbance like low libido, vaginal dryness, chronic infections, pain with sex. You can have vitamin, mineral, and antioxidant depletion. It messes with your thyroid. It can intensify your risk of blood clots or strokes, increasing your risk of breast, cervical, or liver cancer, increasing your risk of diabetes. It can even increase your risk of heart attacks. It can even trigger autoimmune diseases. So, and a lot of this information I got in this book. So if you're curious where I got it from, there is a 300% increase of developing Crohn's if you take the pill. And that's an autoimmune and an inflammatory issue. So that is like shocking that can occur. So I'll go into a couple more of the like risks. And again, this is totally just for education. Like this is never to say like, you're bad, you take it. Trust me, been there. I just wish that I had someone telling me like what risks were or how I could support myself a bit more if I chose to take it, right? So there is something called post-birth control syndrome that you might get if you stop taking the pill. Because the communication between your ovaries and the brains are shut down while you're on the birth control pill, there's a hard time for it to regain that connection after. So those symptoms that might occur after might be the reason why you started the pill in the first place, because they weren't treated from the root cause. So those might be your loss of your period, adult acne, hormonal irregularities, infertility, pill-induced PCOS, hypothyroidism, gut dysfunction, or autoimmune symptoms. These usually occur 4 to 6 months after discontinuing the pill. And symptoms that arise when you stop taking the pill, like I said, are suppressed probably when you're taking the pill, but they're still there, like they're still underlying. So these can be, again, things like headaches, mood swings, anxiety, depression, all of those kinds of things that we may have been trying to, support in some way with the pill, but it was just masking symptoms. So it might take up to 9 months for your cycle to regulate after birth control. I think mine took, September, October, November, December, January. I think I want to say like 6 months before I started to have a regular cycle. There are major changes post-birth control. You might have shorter luteal phase, you might have longer cycles, you might have a cycle where there's no egg released, which means no fertility for months or even years. So one thing that we can do when you're coming off of birth control, if you choose to, and before that, is to support your liver. Your liver's been working overtime for however many months or years you've been taking birth control because of the synthetic hormones, and it's been working really, really hard. So supporting our liver is important. There's also nutrients that are depleted that are critical for your hormone balance and your health. So things like B7, magnesium, and zinc that you can be taking before and during and after if you choose, or whether or not, even if you're staying on birth control, those are good, nutrients to have so that you're supporting yourself. So another thing that we want to be concerned about when we are looking at hormonal health is environmental toxins. So we're exposed to hundreds of chemicals a day, even before leaving the house. Our skin is our largest organ. Like you think about, I'm wearing a shirt, I've got a bra on, I've got pants on, underwear, the towels that I washed, I sleep in my sheets, whatever is, in the air in my home, whatever we're using to clean the counters, that is, our skin touches that. And it's absorbed into our skin, and our liver processes whatever toxins are there. So our liver is working overtime to process birth control if we're on it. Like our beauty products, our skincare, those kinds of things can be filled with parabens, formaldehyde, synthetic fragrances, and those are hormone disrupting or endocrine disrupting chemicals. So those are things that we want to work on getting out of our home, whether we, choose to stay on birth control, coming off of it, we're off of it, even just without, right? We don't want our hormones to be messed with. There's so much more than just for reproduction. Another big thing is our gut health. So everything honestly starts with our gut, our immune function, our hormones, even our mood, immune function, digestion, like everything. So all diseases begin in the gut. So we want to make sure that we have a healthy gut to help remove excess estrogen. So estrogen we can get from, we normally have some in our body that we need to get rid of, but also like those synthetic hormones that I mentioned. So xenoestrogens are another one that we can get in certain products that we're using, or, toxins in our home. And they kind of like take the place of the good natural estrogen in our body, and it's harder for our body to get rid of that. So the way that we get rid of excess estrogen in our body is through our bowel movements, through having stools, regular poops. So if we're not having regular bowel movements, if we're not supporting our digestion, we might not be able to get rid of that excess estrogen, and that might build up and lead to other hormonal issues. Chronic medication use also alters our gut microbiome. So birth control disrupts our normal flora, and it's an environment for overgrowth of bacteria and yeast that might be harmful to us. So another cool thing, which is actually sad when I think about, but mom's microbiome is baby's microbiome. So if you've heard of this, that like your grandma's grandma or your great grandma, whatever they did, used, ate, whatever their gut microbiome was, that can lead to yours and your babies and your baby's babies, right? It's crazy that it can, last generations and generations, but it's so important that we take care of our gut health. Your female hormones, your gut, and your microbiome are intimately connected. And because the pill alters that microbiome and your gut integrity, it also puts you at risk for inflammatory diseases, like autoimmune stuff. Another thing that can happen with the pill is it sabotages your thyroid. So the thyroid is so important for everything in our body. It helps with digestion and just regulation of our hormones and metabolism, sleep. Like hormones are so important to us. So birth control can deplete vital nutrients that your thyroid requires to synthesize your thyroid hormone. So things like zinc, selenium, and B vitamins. And again, like I mentioned, the pill is inflammatory, and inflammation is at the root of chronic disease. Another important part that birth control can affect is our adrenals. So our adrenal system is our fight or flight. We need it. It's important to us. We need to know, like, we're wired if something scares us, or, we're running from a bear, that we can run away. But we also don't want to be in overdrive of our adrenals, and we don't want to have high cortisol that can affect our entire body. So our body's trying to keep up with all of the inflammation caused by the pill, but that can cause disruption. So it can cause us to have adrenal fatigue. Things like chronic stress, mental, physical, emotional, can all disrupt the way your brain and your adrenal glands communicate. So they'll continue to excrete cortisol when stressed, and this can cause hormonal and immune chaos. It can also increase our estrogen when we're stressed and cause more inflammation, more estrogen, more stress, more cortisol. Like, it's just a cycle, right? Let's see what else I got. Metabolism is another one that the birth control can affect. It can interfere with proper metabolic function. It also can increase our risk of developing diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. There's also a link between metabolism, insulin resistance, and PCOS. So many people are prescribed birth control to help with symptoms of PCOS, like acne, weight gain, excessive hair growth, and irregular periods. But this doesn't get to the root cause of the problem. Evidence suggests that insulin resistance from inflammation may actually cause the PCOS, not the other way around. And insulin resistance can cause damage to our brain, our kidneys, our eyes, and even our ovaries. So we don't want to be in this chronic inflammatory state, or it's going to infect our entire body. Studies found that as high as 75% of women taking oral birth control have a vitamin B6 deficiency, which is an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. Women taking birth control have 2 to 4 times risk of getting a clot. That was like the one thing that I was told before I did birth control was risk of clots go up, especially for smoking. I smoked as a teenager, so I had both of those. Yeah, in general, your risk of having a stroke, out of 100,000 women of reproductive age, 4.4 strokes per 100,000 women. 8.5 when you're on birth control. So it doubles your risk, which is scary. There's also high risks of too much estrogen. So breast, cervical, liver, and brain cancer are all associated with the pill because they're estrogen related cancers. So if you're on estrogen a long time, whether it be birth control pill or hormone replacement, if you are in menopause, that's another thing that can contribute to that. So another thing that I found so interesting, this is one, and I've heard from a lot of people now, but our mood can even be affected by birth control. It may interfere with the ability to respond to fear and stress in an appropriate way. It can give you an altered fear response. It can influence how you interact with your children or your partner. It decreases your sensitivity to oxytocin, so it might impact the ability to bond with your baby or your partner. It can even affect your relationship satisfaction. Isn't that wild? But that can do that, right? It can influence how you socialize and behave as a person altogether. Like, how scary is that? That the way that we communicate with people, the way we make connections, the way we are in relationships might be affected because of what the birth control pill does to us. Like, that's wild, especially at a young age. Like for me, when I started on it, that's when I was making relationships, when I was supposed to be making friendships, when I was, learning about myself and in environments where you're socializing, getting to know people and learning about yourself. That can affect the person that you are and the way that you interact with people. Like, that's frightening. So a 13-year study following 1 million women ages 13 to 34 found that you are more likely to be diagnosed with depression for the first time if using hormonal contraceptives. 23% more likely to be prescribed an antidepressant if you're taking birth control pill. And teens taking the pill are 80% more likely to develop depression. Crazy. Women who take hormonal contraceptives have 3 times the risk of suicide as those who do not. That is alarming, right? This is something I was never told, never informed of, never aware of when I started it, right? In women who take hormonal contraceptives, there's more inflammation and immune system dysregulation, which are actually involved in depression as well. The pill depletes nutrients crucial for brain health, lowers testosterone, disrupts our thyroids and adrenals, causes leaky guts, and any or all of those can lead to depression. There's also a decrease in our neuroprotective molecules that protect our brain. One of those is tryptophan, which is an amino acid that is needed to make serotonin, which is in your gut as well as your brain. And serotonin helps with like mood and feel good. So if our gut and our brain are affected by the birth control pill, we're going to have a harder time with our mood. Another thing that can be affected is anxiety. So when we're stressed, our body favors survival over fertility. It begins making more cortisol at the expense of progesterone, which is that calm, love, feel-good hormone. And the gut creates a significant amount of serotonin. So like I mentioned, if we're not taking care of our gut health and we're on birth control or coming off of it, or anyways, regardless, we need to be taking care of our gut health so that we have that good serotonin in our body, and it can help us avoid anxiety. Nutrient deficiency also places you at higher risk for anxiety, and the birth control pill can deplete a lot of nutrients. So I'm going to go over a couple of those. Research has shown that taking the birth control pill depletes your body of important nutrients. Here's some common ones that you might have heard of. So folate or folic acid. Folate is the natural form. That helps us make new red blood cells. A healthy birth, it reduces the risk of neural tube defects. It helps create healthy new cells, new DNA, new RNA. Birth control can deplete magnesium, which is needed for more than 300 biochemical reactions in the body. Nerve and muscle function, healthy immune function. It helps keep our heartbeat steady, our bones strong, helps make DNA, and helps relay info from the brain to the body. So important. Birth control can deplete selenium, which is great for reproduction, for thyroid, DNA function. It protects our body from free radicals, which damage our cells. cognitive function, fertility, and metabolism. Birth control can deplete vitamin B2, which helps break down proteins, fats, carbs, and converts carbs into ATP, which is energy for our body. So we need it, it's important. Birth control can deplete vitamin B6, which has a neurotransmitter function. It allows our brain to communicate with the rest of our body, and ensures metabolism occurs smoothly. So it's really important for nerve and immune system support. It can also decrease vitamin B12, which helps keep our nerve and blood cells healthy, helps us make DNA and red blood cells, metabolism, nerve function, and it can actually carry genetic material. Birth control can decrease vitamin C, which helps reduce our risk of cancer, heart disease. It's necessary for growth, development, and healing of tissues, the formation of collagen, absorption of iron. I had low iron when I was on birth control. Wound healing and immune function. Birth control can decrease vitamin E, which is an antioxidant. It helps protect our body from free radical damage. It's important for vision, reproduction, brain, bones, and skin. Birth control can decrease our zinc, which is actually important for immune function, and it helps make proteins, DNA, and genetic material. And in addition, the pill lowers our antioxidants like coenzyme Q10, which is important for growth and maintenance, for skin, for heart health, and it actually improves our energy and is supportive for fertility. So those are a lot of nutrients and vitamins and minerals that we're not told, or I was not told, I don't know about you guys, but I was not told that those are things that I might need to be supplementing with in diet, in actual supplements, in nutrition, or things that I might need to watch for when I'm taking the birth control pill. So I had 15 years of taking that, and I did not support my body in that way until the last few years when I began to dig into essential oils and plant-based products. Then I started taking supplements. So for years, I was lacking those things that are so vital for the body. So another thing that is affected by birth control is libido and fertility. So what birth control effectively does is robs you of your period, or robs you of your libido. And orgasms have amazing health benefits. So they reduce stress and anxiety, they increase circulation, improve autoimmune diseases, improve menstrual cycles, improve fertility. They help with glowing skin, relieving migraines, better sleep, helps you live longer. Women who have sex on a weekly basis have more predictable cycles, and they can improve our fertility. And then research shows that people who have orgasms have 50% reduction in mortality. So having frequent orgasms can actually save your life, which is interesting. So if you're not having a libido and you're not able to orgasm, and because you're on the pill or whatever reason, but if that, suppresses it even more, that actually affects your entire health. Again, not just sex, not just reproduction. The body's meant to work in harmony. It is meant to have certain hormones doing certain things, certain nutrients doing things. That is the role of the body. It's meant to work in harmony and, just go and do what is needed. But when we're taking something that affects our entire body in this way, our hormones, our inflammation, our immune system, our gut, it affects the whole body, not just reproduction. So we might not want to get pregnant at the time. That's why we take birth control, but little do we know it's affecting every single piece and every single part of our body. And yes, while the time you're taking it, but with that post-birth control syndrome I mentioned, it's actually going to also affect things later on and after. Okay. So birth control is linked to a loss of interest in sex, reduced arousal, difficulty achieving orgasms, painful orgasms, less frequent sex, and overall lack of sexual enjoyment. The pill actually shrinks your ovaries because it shuts off that communication between your brain and your ovaries, and it stops you from ovulating. So there's increased risk of infertility and delayed fertility. So if you've been on birth control for 10 or more years, it's associated with a thinner endometrium lining where your fertilized egg implants itself, and it needs to be a certain thickness for the baby to want to nestle in. So over time, you might become pregnant, but you might miscarry. Again, I'm not saying this is, your root cause of everything, or you are going to be infertile, or that's why you miscarried. No, please know that this is not of a space of judgment, or this is going to happen to you, or this isn't going to happen to you. But this is important because I want children. I want to have a baby. I want to have family. And if the time comes that I do have trouble conceiving, I will obviously be so disappointed in myself, and not just myself, but, the healthcare people that were supposed to, support me as a teenager and a young adult going on birth control, that I was not informed of these risks, right? I didn't want a baby at that time, but I do eventually, right? So it is important that we know these things, so that maybe it's, too late for us to go back in time and, not take birth control or have more empowerment and more education and more, be informed in our choice, but we can share with other people and we can help them, and, we can teach future generations to, have options, right? So what can we do? We can be informed. Like I said, ask questions, find a healthcare provider you trust and feel comfortable with. I highly suggest this book. Like I said, if you're on birth control, even if you're not, if there's any kind of like hormonal things that you want to look into, it is such a good book and has so many resources. I've not used them personally, but functional medicine and naturopath are really great for getting to root causes of things. And though that may be, an option for you if you have hormonal things. Another thing you can do is tracking your cycle. So it's honestly not that hard. It's super easy. Someone who didn't have a cycle, didn't have a period for so many years, I am new to it, but it's not as hard as you might think, and it's not that overwhelming. The biggest thing for me when I came off was I had fear of, will I have super heavy periods like I did? Will I have bad cramps? And I just psyched myself out. So when I finally did it, it's so much better life without birth control, honestly. Again, it's your choice, but it is not tricky to track. You're actually only fertile for 5 to 6 days in the month. So it's amazing, and not in a good way, but amazing that we're put on birth control with that regular amount of hormones that does not ebb and flow the entire month if we're trying not to get pregnant and we're trying to prevent pregnancy. But we're on this hormone for the entire month, and we can only get pregnant 5 to 6 days of the month, right? So tracking cycle is super important. You can use apps. I personally use Flow. I know there's Clue. There's a lot of different other ones. But you'll need to track your temperature. So basal body temperature tracking is super easy. There's cervical mucus that you can, track and relate to your cycle and when you're tracking. Nutrients, food, and supplements. So again, this book is really good about if you have any kind of symptoms or any hormonal imbalances, what to add in for nutrition, what to add in for testing to see if, things are out of whack, and also some supplements. So this book is so good. I will share a couple supplements that I think everybody should be on. But having a chemical-free home is so important too. Like I mentioned, everything that we're using on our body, like our liver is getting into our skin, or our liver's trying to process. If we have been coming off of birth control, any of those, our liver and body are working harder. So anything we can do to make it easier, right? If we're getting rid of one thing, but we still have all these chemical filled things with toxins and synthetic fragrances and endocrine disruption hormones. If we have those in our home that we're still trying to process and work through, our body's just working so much harder. So switch out your laundry soap, switch out your cleaner. Those are probably the top 2 ones that I would suggest for having a chemical-free home. We use Thieves, and we've used that line for the last 6 years. So luckily we've already had a chemical-free home when I started to dig into this. Also chemical-free products. So especially our menstrual products and our sex products. So things like condoms, tampons, pads, lube, those things can be filled with hormone disrupting chemicals and just not great things for our body and our hormonal system. So that is really important also to look into. There's also a wide range of options when it comes to that. So just being aware, being more informed, looking at labels, learning, reading, asking questions, those are super important and are going to pay off big time when we're thinking about hormones and cycle. So there are, no, I won't even go into that because there's so many. I'll do another video on that, but there are some suggested Young Living supplements that I would 100% suggest that kind of hit all of the nutrient deficiencies. So supplements aren't to take the place of our food or our diet or our nutrition. They're to help us. So again, if you're on birth control, coming off, have been off a little bit, our body needs that extra support. So diet, nutrition, and food is first, and then supplementation. Master Formula is basically all encompassing. It hits almost every one of those nutrient deficiencies. And then Super B is super important. Super B, super important. It's so good for hormonal, our adrenal system. It also hits a ton of those nutrient deficiencies. Life 9, which is a probiotic, because our gut health is so important, like I mentioned. So those would be kind of my top two for when you're adding in supplements that you want to support yourself if you are on birth control, whether you're coming off or you've been off for a while, and even if you're not, like just to support our body, our gut, and our hormones. So that is kind of the good and the bad of birth control. This is not, again, meant to, shame anyone for what their choice is. It's not meant to say you should or shouldn't do something. It's just about having informed choice. And I think that's something that we need to have more of, and I think we've shifted a ton in the last, since I was a teenager and it was an option for me, that was just the option. I went in, I didn't tell my parents, I went in, I got it, and that was that. I was not educated on choices or risks or, things I could do to support my body if I chose to take it. And I think that's something that's such a disservice to women, especially teenagers and young women growing up. So it's so important that I think that we learn, and I'm still 100% learning about this. Like I said, I was on birth control for 15 years, didn't have a period for 7 years because of an IUD. So I'm not an expert in this subject, but it's something that I am passionate about because I know that it affects our entire body, our mind, and it's something we can do better in and we can support other women in. So I hope you guys have a good day. If you're watching replay, feel free to ask questions and I will help support you as best I can.